Hey everyone. It is Saturday, and that means that we're actually going to do Summoning Saturdays live. I know that we have some people who have actually been coming to Summoning Saturdays, and I'm sorry it hasn't been happening for the last couple of weeks. February was a pretty rough month. Um, I know everybody got pretty slammed with the weather in February. I know not absolutely everybody on Earth did, but North America was pretty creamed. You may have heard about it. If not, well, now you know. So, yeah, weather pretty much flattened me for the last couple of weeks. But today I am going to talk about using radios for any number of occult things. Actually, I listed a couple of things in the description. For instance, you can use it for divination, you can use it for spirit contact. They are two different things. Um, and you can also use it for a kind of psychic and spiritual perception. There's also other things you can use it for. First off, I just want to talk about, like, what kind of radio. I got this for $12 on Amazon. There is not currently a link to it in the description. I mean, just search for Amazon on Amazon for a video and just get the cheapest thing you find, and I think you're good. Like, this thing takes AA batteries. By the way, I forgot to search for one that was USB chargeable. But I mean, it's 2023 and they still sell these, and they're so cheap now. This one will do AM, FM, and shortwave. Um, and that makes it very interesting and very flexible. I suggest having shortwave available if you want to do experiments. You don't have to. You can always just use the radio that's in your car. There's radios available on many different pieces of technology that we already have here. You can always get a radio app for your phone or for your computer. I will say having an actual radio with a dial is really important in an antenna, because then you can do a lot more experiments with that. Without that, you're not getting as much of the point of using a radio, which is that there are radio waves going through you right now. There are radio waves going through everything around you, and they're also going through you. And they may not be going all the way through you. You may be blocking the waves, which means that the reception of the radio is not as good, but still they are attempting to get through you. And so radio is all around you, and it's happening all the time. What's fascinating about radio is that, um, I mean, for so much of human civilization, I can't say if, like, maybe there was a previous human civilization that actually discovered radio, but for the recorded human history that we have, all of human history, nobody was using radio. It was just never for the recorded human history that we have. All of human history, nobody was using radio. It was just never being used. Radio, uh, certain bands of radio, he was basically hearing stuff from space, and it was freaking him out. Because if you ever hear sounds from space, pulsars and other things sound really freaking weird. Early video game sounds, like, the whoop 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 whoop, all that stuff, those are space sounds. Like, they decided to if it was a video game where you zapped things in space, that they would use space sounds, and so they just used of radio sounds from space. And so, like, what you think of as video game noises is actually the sound of space. It's the sound of radio transmissions from space. And are any of those actually from another civilization? Well, science can't answer that yet. Although SETI, SETI, search for extraterrestrial intelligence, that is a program that has telescopes, radio telescopes, and other things, listening devices, all around, pointed at the sky, trying to see something trying to reach us. Is something trying to reach anything? We want to contact someone. The Earth is looking for a friend in space. So, radio. Radio is something that can come from space. It is something that can go into space. There are lots of radio transmissions that are happening around you right now. Some of them are happening on purpose. Some of them are happening on accident. Some of them are happening from secret government number stations. You can tune into those. I think you can find those on If you can find those on shortwave, that'd be pretty cool. But I think you have to like listen on ham to get number stations. But also listen to the number stations on the internet. It's not very hard. These days with the internet, it's not very hard to do much of anything when it comes to information, at least. So let's talk about what you can do with the radio. First of all, if you just turn a radio on, and this is going to be noisy because I'm just going to demonstrate it. You just turn a radio on into any staticky channel. You start to hear, well, what's radio sound like? I've got it on channel 2112 on shortwave, and some experiments you can do. See if the antenna is affected by where you point it. Basically, see if pointing the radio in different directions, if pointing the antenna in different directions affects the sound of the radio in any way. This is a lot easier to demonstrate whenever you've got a channel with some kind of actual speaking on it. But I want to be able to like talk and have the thing there at the same time. I just wanted to be able to demonstrate it. So the thing is, the static is actually useful if you're a psychic. It's useful for lots of things. But basically, if you want to try doing divination with the radio, you can, for instance, go on FM and randomly just screw the dial back and forth. And as you scrub the dial back and forth, just listen to what pops up. I'm not going to do it on here because I don't want to end up accidentally hitting copyright music because you know I'm gonna. It's the radio. But you can do this yourself at any time, and it's free. So I know some of you may know of ghost boxes. Those basically do this automatically. They kind of constantly take in different transmissions and slice them up. They basically jump between different bands so fast that it's like, you know, from one word to a half a word to half a word, going between different things, and you can have it say different weird things. But the thing is, you don't really need that to get random input from a radio. Even if it's coming through on a radio station where they play music, it's still random because you can't get that radio station to play exactly what it is that you need them to play at a given second. It's just not possible. And you can't do that on a sustained basis. Certainly, you can't do that on a sustained basis. So, since you cannot control what is played on FM, AM radio, you can use any transmission as the basis for divination. I think the most important thing is figuring out what is actually um, what is your selection for using for divination versus is just a transmission on the radio. And I mean, this is also a question you have with tarot cards. So when do you stop drawing tarot cards? If you have a spread, it's a lot simpler. Then you have kind of a formula for how it is that you do these things. With radio, you might want to develop a formula. It's like that you stay on the every 10 seconds you change the dial. So you listen for 10 seconds, whatever it says is going to be relevant, you change it, 10 more seconds, change it, 10 more seconds. So that way you have kind of an arbitrary randomness, you have kind of arbitrary cutoff. If something's important, it's going to be said within those 10 seconds. And another thing that you can try is just at random finding the first station where you can hear somebody actually speaking on and just hear whatever it is that they have to say. If you've got a question, just go for the first it is that they have to say. If you've got a question, just go for the first hearable words on the radio. And that's another way where you cannot rig this ahead of time. I'd say that if you're doing some kind of psychic demonstration, someone could question whether or not you're just landing on a radio station that was run by a friend of yours, or if you had like the machine rigged in some way. But just realistically, if these were all like clear channel stations or this was satellite radio or something, something that's just like very high level corporate control, it's going to be operated pretty in a pretty default manner with no one really able to fiddle with it. That's going to be a pretty good source of stuff like divination or spirit communication. Now, in spirit communication and divination, I think a lot of times the question is, how is this even happening? And I've got two two things that I think weigh in on how it is even possible that you could get meaningful info from a radio transmission from a human radio station or from like a song station. One, um, I think that whatever entities could use radio to communicate exist on some level that just interacts with quantum reality differently. Maybe they exist on a quantum level where they can kind of just pick and choose different realities. But I also think that they don't really have to worry about linear time. I think that whenever quantum entities need to do something, it just sort of creates itself. Like whenever they inject something into the present moment, the past for that present moment creates itself automatically. So I just do not think that for quantum level beings, for spirits or ghosts or whatever, it's really that much of a problem for them to communicate with stuff like the radio. I think that stuff isn't actually complicated for them. I think like other things are much more complicated for them, like say eating delicious food. So um let's see, that's one way that you can do the divination thing. I'd suggest just going ahead and experimenting with the radio to see what else you find. One thing that I like to do is to change it to a static station, one that my ears can tolerate, since some of them are pretty annoying, and just do some random stuff with a pen. um just draw whatever it is that kind of comes into your head, make marks, whatever, but do some automatic art to the static and see what it is that you get. If you've ever like stared into TV static back whenever that was more of a thing, um back whenever we had an analog signal to deliver static, because nowadays that's just not the same. But whenever you could really stare into the TV static, there were a lot of very interesting shapes that one could see in it. Especially if you went to different channels where they were the signal was scrambled in different ways. So listening to the radio static channels, I think produces a very similar effect. Your ears hear a lot of random things, and sometimes they assemble it into real words. Sometimes there's words just hovering on the edge of hearing. Every now and then, there's a just like weird noises that pop up, and you're like, "What the heck is that?" All of these things can feed your subconscious and can cause some very interesting uh, communication to happen on a more spiritual level, on a more psychological level. So, listening to the static stations, I think is really fun. Also, just search around and see what you find. Sometimes, one thing I enjoyed as a kid was actually searching around on the FM and AM radio, because sometimes I would hear TV broadcasts. Like there were TV broadcasts that were being done in a way that they were also broadcasting on the radio for some reason. Like the sound was going on the radio, and so I could hear cartoons on the radio. It was so weird. So sometimes there's just stuff on the radio that you would not expect. There's just weird stuff happening, um, and it's worth trying to listen to. So with spirit communication, like I said, quantum level beings, they can kind of make sound happen however they need. They can cause they can cause things that don't seem like they could be caused. whenever this happens, I suggest not freaking out too much and trying not to focus on how's this happening, and more just focusing on what is the message that is trying to be communicated. What is trying to be communicated by whatever phenomena it is that you're recognizing. Because you can always try to explain this later, but in the moment, if something is trying to communicate with you, it would be best to try to actually understand that communication within the span of time that they're trying to communicate with you, because then you might actually be able to have a conversation in that moment. You might be able to communicate back to them in the span of time where they're actually paying attention to you. I think this is really important because if any of these are beings from space, then what time it is when they're communicating with you is very important. If you wait too long, the Earth will have rotated and you will basically be pointed in a different direction in space. So they're going to be talking to another part of the planet if enough time passes. That's why I think certain rituals just can't really last too long. Like certain spiritual events just have to stay within a liminal space. They have to be limited. The holidays last a short amount of time for a reason, because if you had those holidays last for like months and months, eventually they would be happening in a completely different region of space. Like the Earth moves through space real fast. And so you'd have entirely different astrology involved and astronomy involved, entirely different stars and planets looking onto the Earth during these things. And if the participation or knowledge of extraterrestrials is in any way relevant to any spiritual stuff that we do or just anything that we do, then knowing, like, keeping an eye on, like, just if 6 hours pass, you're going to be pointing at a different quadrant of space, and that's just really important to keep in mind. Like the Earth rotates, the Earth moves through space, the Earth goes around the sun, and these all have an effect on what kinds of transmissions can be received on Earth at any given time. People talk a lot about spiritual transmissions. I've heard all kinds of transmission talk, like physical, really existing physics-based transmissions, the kinds of transmissions that you can receive on a radio. When we talk about those, um, there are certain things that you have to keep in mind. So, I mean, you're going to operate an antenna, or you're going to operate a radio. Make sure you got your antenna extended. Make sure it's pointed in a good direction. If you're trying to get a radio signal, sometimes you're going to have to bend it around and point it in different ways to get good reception. You might have to put some tinfoil around the thing, just so you know, like you can boost an antenna just by adding quite a lot of like receptive metal to it. And it just depends on what kind of, like, how big of an antenna you really want to build. But like I find it's really about finding your station, finding the channel on here. I mean, we talk about in spiritual stuff channeling. Well, what about the channels on a TV or a radio? The channels, and they channel information. They channel sound and conversation and advice and news into this device and then project it out via the speakers. So, like, kind of getting in tune with the scientific um methods of channeling, I think, is important, because uh the psychic method of channeling is very not just spiritual, but I think it's very psychological. And the thing with human psychology is that it's very symbol based. It's very logic based, and so the more that you interact with technology that has a similar capability. I think the more that your brain starts to learn more metaphors, more symbols, it has broader vocabulary and possibly more ability because it's been interacting with an actual channeling device, the radio in this case. Um, so that's two methods of communication. And then I also talked about extending your awareness. I want to talk again about how many signals are going through us at any given time. Now, that was going the entire time. I had the radio off, but the entire time the radio was off, the radio signals, the radio waves have been going through this room, have been a part of like the environment that I've been in all this time. Radio waves have been here. They have been a physical reality. Um Now just because they're a physical reality doesn't mean that we can perceive them. With the radio, we can perceive radio waves. We can perceive a physical part of our physical reality that we normally cannot perceive. And I really want to just emphasize how important that is, that we have an instrument that can pick up radio waves and can interpret them for us, can give us uh this window into reality, because without this we're completely blind on the radio spectrum. Humans can't hear radio. We can't perceive radio. This has been going in the universe like this entire time, the entire time that humanity has existed, radio has existed. But for most of that time, I'm pretty sure that humanity had no awareness of radio whatsoever. If there was a previous civilization that had means of using radio, great. I'm very happy for them, and I hope that we find evidence of them, and that we find out what it is that they did, more of the history. But if they didn't exist, then we've basically got like about 150 years of radio. Not a very large amount of time compared to the span of human existence. So this the entire span of human existence, radio has been here. Radio waves have been based, just like raining upon the earth, washing up upon the shores of the earth. And I mean, what if there were signals all along from whatever extraterrestrials might be out there? What if we've gotten hundreds of signals before and it seems like we're ignoring them because we had no ability to receive them, no ability to even know that they were happening? We may never know. But when it comes to that, never know. But when it comes to that question, I want to take that and sort of turn it around. What makes that any different than the experience that we have with spirits? Spirits that are difficult to communicate with, spirits that we can't just have a spoken conversation with because they can't speak out loud in a way that our ears can physically hear, not unless we use something like the radio. Um, this entire time there has been a quadrant of reality that we cannot communicate. And am I talking about radio or am I talking about the spirit world? That's why I think it's important to experiment with the radio, because this is a device that can actually give you a window into the spirit world. I don't really feel that using the electromagnetism detectors, the ghost boxes and stuff, is um a direct measurement of the spirit world or a direct interaction with the spirit world. I still think that's pretty tangential. I think just using a radio is, in my opinion, better because there's like there's a human component to the radio. And so if you're trying to communicate with ghosts, then they will be familiar with the human components of the radio. They will kind of understand it on a certain level because it's human technology. Now, if it's aliens, then they'll start to get an understanding of human technology, and that's good. But if they were trying to communicate through a ghost box or something, I feel like aliens would have like yet another wall they have to get past when it comes to interacting with humans. Whereas with the radio, there's just, I mean, if they were trying to monitor communications of Earth, then it would be a lot easier to figure out how to interact with the radio than with a ghost box. That's my opinion. And this is kind of far afield anyway, but I've been thinking about this, like watching through a lot of YouTube videos on how would aliens communicate with humanity if they tried to communicate. Um, Looking into things like um, the oh gosh, the paradox. You know, that guy who said that Fermi paradox. There we go. I couldn't remember his name. Enrico Fermi. He's one of the people who posed the paradox of like if there is if there is like extraterrestrial life out there, then why haven't we found anyone? Like where is everybody? And I don't know, that's really big of us to ask, isn't it? I mean, it's not like we really searched all that much of space. And it's also not like we've been searching for all that long. So, like, I feel that for one, it's kind of like giving up after less than a century of looking. Um, wow. But two, um, the paradox of it's kind of the same question for the spirit world. Like, if there is a spirit world there, then why haven't we been able to prove it's there? If there are ghosts, then why haven't we been able to prove that they exist? And that question of proof is always so weird because, like, we all agree that certain phenomena happen in the world. We all agree that like people have believed in the existence of the spirit world and the existence of ghosts for pretty much the entire existence of humanity. What proof do we need exactly? So I feel that the radio helps make something more tangible. For one thing, it helps make the invisible more tangible. There's these signals that are there all the time, and we've been completely oblivious to them. You turn on the radio, suddenly it becomes obvious just how much it is out there that we're missing. And whenever I turn on the radio, I'm just turning in one station. That's just one station of static. There's like plenty of stations on three different bands of radio just available on this one device that I have. And like, if you can operate like professional radio and you have a license for it, you stuff. I mean, this is nothing, but this is still like way more than I'm able to perceive on my own. So what kind of messages from I don't know. Um but it's really important to be aware of just how much it is that we may not know. Just how much it is that is in the world that is a mystery. I think that a lot of the despair in this world is from people who are very sure of things, and I don't think that they really can be as sure of things as they claim to be. There's like a lot we don't know how things are going to go. We don't know what this world is going to turn out like. And it's very easy to get caught up in this world, to get caught up in the human side of the world and the present reality and be completely blinded by that present moment and by everything that's happening in it, and completely fail to see anything else that is happening. Call it a time blindness. It's hard to see the past. It feels impossible to see the future, and the present seems to fill up our vision so much that we can't see past it at all. We can't see around it to see anything else. But the rest of time is there, even if it's beyond our perception. Now, what if there was an instrument that was like a radio that could perceive other parts of time? Like, for instance, if you consider this radio and this one station right here to be the current reality. So station 2112 on shortwave is our current reality. This is it. Well, if I could change the dial on reality to a different channel of reality? What if I could change the dial on time to a different channel of time? Just as easy as I can do with this radio. How would one do that? What device would one use to do that? And how would the control be exerted? I mean, the most common means I've seen this done, besides, of course, the time tradition of time machine. Just like a big time machine with big levers and doodads and looks very complicated, makes beeps and boops. A TARDIS. But like the problem with the TARDIS is that it's just a big mysterious piece of machinery. And all of the interior, like it changes from time to time, from doctor to doctor, but it's all very like whoop whoop, super mysterious machinery made to look um futuristic yet also ineffable, and otherwise isn't really made to look like it performs a specific function that we would even understand. It's made to be inscrutable. So that kind of um, abstract time machine, that's not really what I would look at making. Instead, I would say um, something like a watch or some other device that also has time available on it. And I would say that on this radio, there's actually a programmable clock. Now the thing is that just says which hour it is, which hour, which minute. Um, and so if it's just hour and minute, then that's going to give you 24 hours and the rest of the minutes of the day to play with. But there's no calendar function there. There's no way to say which day of the week, which year is like that. It's really just the time of day that seems at variance with the clock change like that. But it is something that you can change, and you can change with the dial. And to me, it was really funny. There's actually a clock on this that displays whenever the power is off, whenever it's in idle mode, and there's also an alarm. And I guess this is something that people like always find useful and want. But I didn't even think of having a clock on my radio, like having a clock radio. I don't need a clock necessarily. But maybe I do. Maybe I do need a clock and I just didn't know. So using a clock, I'd say a wristwatch, a pocket watch. Pocket watches especially are very evocative for time travel. And of course, there's the hourglass. I mean, there's the time turner in Harry Potter does the hourglass thing. Um, Time travel usually uses a time device. Now, to travel, the thing about using a watch for traveling beyond a few days is that you're going to be winding it forever. to get back like some years, right? To wind a watch back so much that you go back several years is going to be a lot of winding. So, would you use something like a calendar or a digital organization device, like a digital calendar, to go back through the years? Um, I think so. I've been using books a lot to do something like this to access knowledge from certain time periods. I like to get books that are from those time periods or books that are about those time periods. Oh, I nudged my cat with my foot. I didn't see him down there. So by having the book, not only do you have the contents that you can read to get the information about the time, but you also can just touch the book, have the book around, vibe with the book, and you'll get a feel for the era that the book is from. Um, you also get a feel for, like, for instance, what the author was like and what the author's thoughts were. Might get a vibe for the publisher or for the community that the book was for, the area that the book was published in, all kinds of things like that. It just really depends on what the book is, what the nature of it is. But for getting the vibe for a time, like collecting magazines from a certain era, collecting books from a certain era is very useful, and it's feasible up until, like, I'd say uh, probably the 1850s. It starts to get a real bummer to collect books once it gets to be too old because then they're very expensive. Um, so collecting items from the era is always a good way to get a connection to that time period. I find books to be a very good way to do this. Partially because when you've got a bookshelf, which obviously I do. There's, like, one right over there. You can see it. I've got many bookshelves. Um, you can basically put all those books together in one area where you can access them all and you can easily find them. You can decide which books to shelve. So you can actually, if you want to do some work with both the 1950s and the late 1980s, then you can just put books from those time periods together on the shelf. You can also do it with movies and such as well, music. Um, and Yeah, so I like whenever I'm doing certain work with certain topics or certain time periods, finding my books from those subjects or eras, and then maybe reshelving them in a certain way that's significant, that either just oriented towards the research I'm doing at the time, or maybe takes different books and puts them together in ways that I hadn't put them together before, giving those books new neighbors, maybe even distributing them throughout my library in different ways than I had before. They don't have to be shelved for me to find them all. I'll probably be able to find them no matter where I put them. But just kind of giving them a new circuit. So those are books. They can do things. I was talking about radio originally, though, and I want to talk a little bit more about it. So, um, the thing about radio is that it's very responsive to physical changes in reality, and even the weather will affect your reception. The time of day can affect your reception. You'll especially find that with AM. A lot of talk radio on AM apparently is a lot more audible at night. There's a lot less interference at night for AM. So during the daytime, it will be like a lot of static there, and the stations aren't very high power, so it won't get past all of the other stuff that's like broadcasting during the daytime. This is why you have so many of those, like, AM, actually AM in the morning, really, really early in the morning AM stations, because those time periods are the ones where they can be heard. Um, so you get just this utter awareness of reality in that moment. You can hear the static. You can hear the static or just the reception, the how good the reception is or how bad the reception is in the signal. And the condition of the signal at that moment can tell you a lot about um, all of the reality around you. It can tell you about the weather. It can tell you about the temperature. It can tell you about the time of day. Um, it can tell you about the signal strength at the station it's coming from. And if it's not a station that it's coming from, it can tell you whatever. It can tell you something about whatever it's coming from. It could tell you something. I think gain awareness of the signal is a good way to start attuning your awareness of other signals that you may be perceiving that are a lot more subtle, that are always going to be silent, that you're never going to have a device that actually detects them the way that the radio detects them. If you're trying to get any kind of psychic messages, if you're trying to gain awareness of telepathy, then using the radio signal will help you understand your own signals. And using the radio antenna will help you understand your own antenna, your own receptivity, your own instruments for interpreting and understanding and receiving the signals. You also may start to gain a more fine-tuned awareness of your own tuning. For instance, if you're using the tuning dial a lot, you're seeing for stations on the radio, you're fine-tuning exactly, what's the best little decimal point to go in on. You may find that you're able to fine tune your receptivity on certain psychic signals now because you've started to gain more of an awareness of just tuning. This can be done with a lot of different instruments. This can be done in a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to be done through radio. It's not that radio is necessary to do this. It's more that radio is a really fun tool for doing this, and it's useful. It's a good way to teach it. It's a good metaphor. But there's many other ways you can do it. For instance, I've talked a lot about books today, even though this is supposed to be about radio. You can use books to do a lot of things that you can use radio to do when it comes to this spiritual and psychic awareness stuff. Now, let's see. Think about what else it is that I want to talk about here. Um, I don't, I don't know where I would find one of these, but I used to have this device whenever I was a kid, and it was really fun. It was a radio, like it was a little speaker that was like this big, with a little handle on the top, and it had a little microphone attached. And I could make the volume go up and down, and I could just use the microphone and say whatever it is that I wanted to say. But I could also, like, it also had a radio on it, so I could change the radio station and find a song that I liked and sing along with the song. And when I sang along with the song, I could actually sing into the microphone, and my voice would come out through the speaker. So my voice would be coming out through the speaker, and the radio would be coming out, like the radio sounds would be coming out through the speaker. Um, and like that would be really fun. Um, I don't know if it would be absolutely necessary, but a radio telephone, if you were trying to do some sort of spiritual communication, and speaking into the microphone would be similar to operating like a spiritual ham radio. Um, that's just something that kind of comes to mind right now. And I haven't looked for anything like that, uh, period. So I really don't know what it is that might be out there, but there's an idea. Um, I mean, does the auxiliary line work to go into the? No, that's only. that's just a headphone line. It would have to have a um it has to be built different to take in a mic. So, hmm. I may be wrapping up today's summoning Saturday. I know it's been a while. Thanks for being patient, bearing with me. Um, it's been really cold during February. Got sick a few times. Got snowed in for a few days. That wasn't fun. And I don't know. Otherwise, it was at least a quieter month than it was last year. So that's nice. I hope everybody is doing okay. I hope everybody's staying safe, stay warm. Um, and yeah, looking to stay on the schedule and be there next week. It is Saturday, right? It's got to be Saturday because yeah, I mean technically right now it's Sunday, and I get that. It's just early morning Sunday. For a second though, I was worried that I'd actually done this on a Friday and just messed the whole thing up. So time is a little bit wonky and relative for me. Sorry about that. You're going to continue to see that as I just sort of get through what it is that I'm getting through. And I don't know. I'm really optimistic for the future. Um, so let's see. Next summoning Saturday. I don't know what the topic will be. Anytime I try to predict that, it doesn't work out very well. So I'd rather just be impulsive. Um, and I don't know. Maybe I'll have some experiments that I did with the radio then, because I actually only got this in the mail today, so I have had barely any time to do anything fun with it. All right. Well, see y'all later.